Okay, this is the correct day. Friday, August 29. I'm Larry Johnson. Welcome to Countercurrents. We're going to be joined shortly by Stanislav Krapivnik. Stas, is both has served in the U.S. military and served in Russia. And so we're going to get some interesting insights from him. He's also worked in the oil industry. So we're going to be able to cover quite a bit of territory. If you enjoy it, please hit the like and subscribe button. Thanks for watching. Just learned that Stas is caught in Moscow traffic, and anybody who has not been to Moscow lately may not appreciate that they get some pretty massive traffic jams. So much for a collapsing economy, as we're told. So let me comment on some other issues related before Stas joins us. We're trying to figure out, is Donald Trump serious about the peace process? Or is he posturing? Now, earlier this week, during his cabinet meeting, Trump was asked about comments by Sergei Lavrov during his interview with Kristen Welker of NBC, if he considered President Volodymyr Zelensky legitimate. And Foreign Minister Lavrov correctly noted that while Russia accepts Zelensky as the de facto leader, the simple fact that he has continued to rule past the expiration of his presidency and justified it by declaring martial law, which under the Ukrainian constitution supposedly stipulates that you can't have elections during martial law. But Russia's position is this, that, so here's a guy that is, the only reason he's still in office is he's declared martial law. He's the one that declared that, so he's got to wait that he can game the system. When he lifts the ban on martial law, there will be a new election. And right now, based on the polling, there's no way in hell that Zelensky would be reelected. So from that standpoint, any agreement that would be signed by Zelensky would be illegal. That's why Russia believes that he's not a legitimate president. Instead of Donald Trump accepting that at face value, he called it, but I'm using his term, bullshit, and accused the Russians of posturing. Now, if Trump really genuinely believes that, then it shows he has no understanding about Russia's intent and the purpose for the special military operation. But there are others like Alex Craner, and I consider Alex a friend, who thinks that Trump may be saying and doing some of these things just to throw off the neocons in the deep state, to make them think that he's in their camp, that he's going to go along with what they want to do, when in fact he's actually assured Vladimir Putin that he is going to work for peace and that this war will come to an end. I am not inclined to agree with Alex on this. I think that Trump is playing his own game, and Stanislav is on the way. You got you logged in. Now what we got to do is click off on the microphone and the video images, and we'll get you on board. Recording here. It was doing a monologue when you showed up. So when you started off, your military career started off with the U.S. military, U.S. Army, is that correct? Did you hear the question? Hello? Can you?
Yeah, I in '93 I joined the Guard, and then in '95 I got commissioned active duty.
So you grew up in the States?
If my military career started in '93, yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. We may have to just turn off. You may want to
try. I'll try just going over to the.
back. Great. So you got into, were you born and raised in the States? Sorry, I don't know these parts of your biography.
No, I was born in Voroshilovgrad, Lugansk. Came to the U.S. in '79.
Oh, okay.
My father was a dissident, and brought the family over in '79.
All right. And so then from there, you got into the National Guard in 1993 and then into the Army in 95.
Yeah. So I was in ROTC after I went to university. First time I went to NC State. Been there 3 times. I think I bought him a building, at least a classroom for sure. Especially considering how much tuition went up sky high.
Sure.
No, I mean, seriously, 1990 in-state tuition was $400. I think it's running like $9,500 now for a semester. Yeah. It's insane.
Yeah. I mean, when I was at University of Missouri, I mean, a few years before you, quite a few years back in '73, my tuition was $250. Okay.
Here's money for those days.
Yeah, that's what some kids pay for like 2 books now at current universities.
At NC State, I started an engineering major, then I switched over to a business major and ROTC in parallel. And then the second time I went, I was serving in parallel, going to NC State, did my computer science degree. And then eventually, after everything, I did a MBA after I got out. I was in the Guard the last year and a half, I was an instructor in the academy down in Fort Bragg.
Oh, okay.
Green and gold. But the first year, I think all my books, and the books were used for 4 years, and you could always find a used book for like $10, $15.
Yeah.
I think I maybe spent $300 on all of my books in the first year. And they're $400 or $500 now for a book. It's insane.
Yeah. No, I spent a lot of time at Bragg when I was doing exercise support for JSOC. So I was inside the JSOC compound. I was at the Delta Force compound doing some training out there. In fact, even one day, I developed a training course to teach Delta Force operators how to go overseas and work with embassies, because oftentimes, there's a real culture clash between the diplomats and the military. Because the foreign service officers start with this arrogance that they're the smartest people in the world, and they're that by definition because they took the foreign service exam. But then when they see a military guy shows up, like yourself, well, you speak multiple languages and you're well read, and they look at you like a dog doing algebra. How does that happen?
Yeah.
So,
and I know that from firsthand experience, because when I was a military advisor in Georgia, it was the funny part. It was a UN mission, right? So there's 2 of us, 2 captains, and all these other UN types. They're all coming up. Hey, here's my application for a visa. I want to get a tourist visa. Can you take it over there and put some good words in and get it pushed through? I'm like, guys, they hate us. They think we're idiots. We know they're idiots.
Yeah.
We have no communication with these people. But please, okay, look, fine. I'll go over there, find out the threat assessment, which was always bullshit anyways. Throw your documents into some bin, and I'm going to go away. But just get you off my back. Fine, whatever. So I was taking these documents over like, okay, here.
Yeah. But, I mean, they're 2 different cultural worlds. And, but anyway, I trained several of the Delta Force personnel with my team, and one day we got finished early, and the Delta guys go, "Hey, want to go shooting?" And I go, "Really? Do we have to police brass or clean weapons?" And he goes, "No." I said, "Great, let's go." So these were the B Squadron guys. These were the guys who had actually captured Saddam Hussein. So,
okay,
a little bit of the story. So, when did you make the move? Go ahead.
I was going to say one thing. I've got a bone to pick with the CIA.
No,
we were in Bosnia.
Only one.
Yeah, well, the one very personal bone. So I'm the XO of a mechanized infantry company in Bosnia. came in as the transportation officer for brigade, which I was a lieutenant. They dropped me in there because there's too many armor lieutenants all over the place and not enough everyone else. I got down there, and our brigade staff got sucked up in the division staff. I'm like, I'm out of here. What else can I do? I don't want to be up here. Yeah. I'm bored out of my wits. I'm a combat officer. They need an executive officer, 2-2 infantry, Alpha Company. I'm like, yeah, I'm there. So I ran down. Plus, I spoke Russian, which got me in real quick because we had a Russian platoon attached to us of airborne Russian platoon. Well, so we get down there, and I mean, we had a range we had set up, and we were going to do joint exercises, infantry exercises, firing. You do low crawl, fire, do run, jump, fire, and so on.
Yeah.
So I got all this set up. I go out there. I mean, it was everything's on the spot, ready to go. I go out there with my guys. I'm the XO, so I go out there at 6 a.m. Yeah, everyone else is coming out at 8 a.m. And I get up there. And the day before, those motherfucking CIA, we knew where they were at. They knew the black trucks. I mean, it was blatantly obvious for them. When you got a 6'2" black guy, boy, he just fits right into Bosnia.
Yeah.
And they had driven their Escalades out there, shot up all of our targets, left all the brass, dug up everything as they drove back out. I'm just there like, fuck,
Oh man,
okay,
yeah.
What out for everybody else out there? There's gonna be a lieutenant colonel coming out there. Look at this, all this. Start digging, start picking. They're like, God, son of a bitch. And we're running around picking everything up, trying to get it all straightened out so it looks good again. It's like, geez, thank you.
They're not exactly what I'd call good diplomats,
No. We, we're on patrol in the suburbs of Tuzla, foot patrol. My CO and I, and we had half the company with us, and it's houses, right? So it's 2-story houses, individual houses, and we're walking by one house, and there's 2 Escalades, a basketball pole, like what you see in an American suburb.
Yeah,
we're looking at this. One of these isn't like the others. One of these doesn't match. Like, let's go. My CEO was like, hey, let's go figure out what the hell's going on here. So we walk up, and I'm a little behind him with one of the other guys, one of the grunts. And he walks up, knocks on the door. And like I said, this 6'2" black guy that's about as wide as the door walks out. We're like, And then they talk for a few minutes. CO comes back down. Like, hey, we're leaving. What's up, sir? We're leaving. What's up, CIA? Oh, got it. We're leaving.
Yeah.
We didn't see this house. And I mean, they stuck out like a sore thumb. They might as well just hung the U.S. flag right up there for all it mattered.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's not unique to CIA. I was involved with a JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command exercise. It was held in Jacksonville, Florida in 1996. My job was to role play the U.S. ambassador in Algeria. It was a biological event where there was a terrorist cell with the smallpox, and the Delta Force was going to come in and save the day. Well, there's also some other highly classified American units to carry out what are called advanced force operations. Anyway, this collection of these different special operations units, we took over the top floor of, I think it was a Marriott Hotel, which was across the river from the Jacksonville football stadium. And if you walk by that hotel, the top floor were all these tactical satellite antennas with the cable snaking out of the windows, real low key. Now you're going, what the hell is that? I mean, there's like 7 or 8 of them. So, and then everybody'd be walking in. They'd have the G-Shock watch, the black shorts, the golf shirt, the tan golf, and boots. Now, so it's like, yeah, that's really low key. Nobody's going to pick you guys out.
On the roof when we were in Eagle Base, which is the headquarters in Bosnia. There's so many antennas and so many dishes. Birds didn't fly over there. They just dropped dead from all the microwave radiation going.
Yeah.
But so we had this thing. It took our military intelligence. Now, this is when I first came in, and then I got off into the infantry company. And I'm in the infantry company. So I deployed everybody down there because I was the brigade transportation officer. I got everybody down there. I was in the last group, so I got there at the beginning of March, and I'm gone. But like 2 weeks later, I found a new job, and thank you, bye-bye, you don't need me. They got me back in at the very end of the rotation for about, almost a year later to move everybody back, because I was the only one who knew how to do it all. So we're probably 3 or 4 months down there already. And our military intelligence, because, that's an oxymoron.
Yeah.
Be careful what you say around your interpreters. They may be working for one of the 3 sides. No shit, really. I think I had one of my interpreters fired because the Bosniaks were just idiots. I mean, these people are serious idiots. They know I'm Russian, and they can't figure out I can understand what they're saying. 70%.
Yeah.
And I'm telling him to say one thing, and he's translating to the Bosniak army. He's translating absolutely something else. I'm sitting there like, yeah, guy. Came back, it's like, I don't want him anywhere near me. I don't want him anywhere near us. This guy's full of crap. He's mistranslating what I'm telling him to translate. Just saying absolute opposites. So I'm like, geez. But so we go into the headquarters, and there are charts everywhere. But there's a cleaning service at the brigade/division headquarters of locals.
Right.
And they tell me, I'm like, why are we covering these up? It's like, well, we used to, but they come in every day. We just got tired of it. So screw it. We've got classified information everywhere hanging up, and the locals are walking and cleaning up. Yeah, it's looking at it's like, yeah, OPSEC is just great here.
Yeah, and see, then you had the experience of moving from the U.S. into Russia and seeing how the Russian military works. And, so because it's the way the West always talks about it, U.S. Army is so much superior to the Russian Army. And you've seen firsthand sort of the best and worst of both sides. So put that into perspective.
Well, I'll say the Russian army has greatly improved. The problem was when the Russian army came in 22, it was pretty disorganized. The only good thing that, as a friend of mine in military intelligence here said, the only thing that was saving us is they were worse off than we were. They were less organized than we were. But the problem was, it's the same problem the U.S. military has right now. Mm-hmm. The Russian military kind of followed the U.S. military and stopped practicing working in division and brigade levels and started working in individual battalion levels. And Syria, of course, only propagated that because they only had about a battalion's worth there, or still do. The same thing is going to happen with the U.S. The U.S. now wants to prepare for war with the big boys. Well, you've got to relearn everything you stopped learning 20 years ago. How to operate in more than a battalion that's spread out in individual companies, and individual companies spread out individual platoon bases. Now you've got to figure out how to function as a large entity in a structure of even larger entities. Mm-hmm. And that's actually pretty hard. And I mean, I'll give you an example. This is one of those no-brainers. I turned down major's rank. I was captain promotable. I turned down major's rank. But I'm pretty sure if I needed to, I was well enough trained, I can run a battalion. But it's one of those no shit moments because I'm driving down. I started driving, going down there with people back in December of 22, 24th of December. It was the fact that the Poles were sitting across from where we were at that I'm still alive. I'm pretty sure of that. I'll tell you that in a minute. But you got people complaining. Then we're talking to guys. I've got people complaining that, well, that battalion leaves. We don't know they leave. I'm like, well, don't you have a liaison from that battalion's headquarters and your headquarters? No. Do you have your liaison? No. That's basics. you got to have now it works that way now. And yes, it's in Soviet and Russian doctrine, just like in the U.S. and any other major army. But they had unlearned that. They had gone down to brigade level and brigade working as individual battalions, and they had lost that basic knowledge. It had to be something that had to be relearned.
Right.
You can't function. One battalion goes on the to attack. Nobody else knows. You got an open perimeter, and then you got Ukrainian units start coming in behind it, or certain because nobody knows that there's now an open perimeter, or they move over to a slightly, 2 kilometers to the left, and nobody's told anybody, and you got a 2-kilometer hole in your perimeter. And honestly, at the very beginning, it was so haphazard. The guys on the ground, they didn't know where the hell the Ukrainians were. I'm pretty sure the Ukrainians didn't know where the hell the Russian army was. It was just, and I had a friend of mine who was gone down there several times with, and he did a lot of, he went through a lot of different channels, and he would map it out. He's civilian guy. Well, he's former police inspector. And he'd map it out, and he would come down there and he'd share the electronic maps with everybody. Like, oh, shit, village next door there, you got Ukrainian presence. Like, yeah. You didn't know that? No. Because communication was just, and everything's gotten, it's gotten up and up, 23, 24, that, the learning curve is steep.
Right.
But 22, and the casualty rates were high, beginning of 22 comparatively, because everybody wanted to be a hero. And that's a problem. Everybody wants to be a hero. Every officer wanted to make a name for himself. This is going to be real short. We got to make a name for ourselves, blah, blah, blah. And everybody's trying to be a hero. And heroes get people killed.
Right.
Themselves included.
Yeah.
Now, don't be a hero. Just do your job.
Yeah.
There's enough shit to go around. Everybody's going to get a bite out of that sandwich.
What we've seen evolve, and I see at least 3-4 phases for the Russia. When Russia went in initially, I think, the plan was apply enough military pressure to get negotiations, but we'll get this thing negotiated. And then that blew up. And then they had all the contract soldiers starting to bail out in August and realized, whoops, we got a manpower problem. So they got to mobilize. And then they upped the conscription levels in November and December. And so then started rebuilding the army. And then by June, they're fully, that was sort of that period, September to the following June, I call phase 2. Phase 3 was then fighting back the NATO planned and directed counteroffensive that failed. And in the process, that's, I think I looked at it as that's where the army turned in terms of really starting to defeat the NATO proxy. And then it continued into 2024 with, the Western military analysts not understanding the concept of a war of attrition and constantly accusing Russia and engaged in, full-on human wave attacks. And while not appreciating that at the same, I wonder at what point, and maybe you have some insight into this, did the Russian general staff wake up and go, Holy Mother of God, we're attriting NATO. We never realized they were this shallow. I think the general staff may have believed that there was actually a lot more strategic depth in the West than has in fact been the case. What's your take?
A friend of mine told me, who was a captain in the airborne special forces back in, I think he got relieved back in '92 when all these officers were getting fired.
Uh-huh.
He was, well, I won't say relieved. He got cut with everybody else. But he was telling me, as a cadet, we're going through training, and they're telling us, "Oh, you're not good enough because those NATO special forces, those NATO guys are just going to cut right through all of you." Blah 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 blah. So they really overinflated. And then the '90s was just a bad time in Russian period.
Yeah.
And everyone's looking at the West like, "Wow, we're inadequate pond scum, and you are the gods." And in business, there's still a degree of that. I did a lot of work in U.S. corporations, and I worked for an Italian corporation too as a director. And you're looking around like, God, you guys are idiots. I work for Halliburton, for God's sakes, one of the most corrupt companies in the world. I was brought in to put them back on their feet because they go in waves. They steal, everything collapses. You bring people that can actually get everything back up on their feet, but those people tend to be honest.
Yeah.
And then you got to get rid of them because they're now blocking your. And I was blocking so much corruption until my senior VP in Houston got fired, and then his entire senior team got removed because we were all in the path of rekindling the corruption. Okay, we waited 2 years. You got everything back on its feet. We want to be, we got to earn, and you're our way.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. They looked at it. The beginning, the very beginning was a really a bad phase. It wasn't the contracted guys didn't leave later. They left at the very beginning because Russia, now it does, but it didn't at that moment have what is called in the military needs of the army.
Mm-hmm.
The needs of the army means we don't give a damn you have a contract. If your MOS is needed, buddy, you ain't leaving. You'll retire before we let you go.
Yeah,
that's how it's going to be. Sorry, but needs of the army trumps any contract. Russia didn't have that at the very beginning, and when the balloon went up, about a third of the officers quit. Like, whoa! I didn't sign up to fight. I just signed up to get bennies and make a good. And a lot of the other conscripted soldiers, they all, okay, we're quit. They stopped that. But the other problems became, you had a lot of these volunteer units. And a lot of those guys will quit. They come in there, see that this is a real fight, and about a third of the volunteers would turn around and go, okay, bye-bye, I'm gone. Because these are strictly volunteer units. The big turnaround really started with that, and which, by the way, helped cause Prigozhin's little rebellion, was when the territories became part of Russia. Officially, because by Russian law, no military organization that is not part of the Ministry of Defense is allowed to function on Russian territory. So all these volunteer battalions, brigades, Cossack battalions, actually the Cossack brigades pretty much have stood their ground. As a Kuban Cossack, I can say they stood their ground. They more of a brotherhood. The various volunteer battalions, a lot of them had a high attrition rate of people running away or just leaving on leave and not coming back. But after that, what happened, once those territories become Russian, all of these independent units are now leaving. So they went in, the military went in, I mean, this is still Shoigu, and brought in stacks of contracts. Gentlemen, this is if you're going to stay, you sign a contract. And everybody signed contracts. Once those contracts are signed, you can't. I mean, you still have people that'll go AWOL here and there, but now it's under. They get under a legal obligation, and they can be put in. They can get arrested and they can be prosecuted for getting AWOL because you've signed a contract. And that, by the way, the only unit that didn't sign a contract was Prigozhin. And there were meatways. Prigozhin was making meatways.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about joining because when mobilization hit, I wrote to the administration. I had two generals behind me. I was like, hey, give me major's rank. I'll come back here. I'll go fight. I'm a combat officer. And this was my hometown is Lugansk getting shelled. I couldn't go before that when everything started because I was on a residency visa or residency in Russia. If I left, my whole family was in that residency, they'd get kicked out. So I couldn't go anywhere. By the time I got my citizenship, things that were calmed down and weren't looking for people particularly. And I got 4 kids, so I was feeding them. Feeding.
Yeah.
But when the mobilization started, I was like, I'll go. I'm a combat officer. I'll go do my duty. And they said, no, we don't need them. We got enough officers. There was a general, a friend of mine, Alexander Vladimirovich Petrov, who was went up to Ministry of Defense. My brain's starting to switch over into Russian on those names. We went to Ministry of Defense, and they said, "Well, how can we give him a major's rank? He hasn't gone through the academy." He's like, "Well, he's freaking right here near Moscow. Send him to the academy. We've got enough officers." And that was the end of that. So, okay, fine. And everyone's like, "Well, you're an information warrior." I'm like, yeah, as a combat officer, that's a second priority. Oh, my wife is thrilled. Oh, yes, you're an information warrior. You're not going anywhere. Like that feels like a second place award.
Hey,
but
better to get a paper cut than a gut shot.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'm a bit masochistic there, or just stupid. Things like that happen. But when that happened, so all of these people that were freaking out and leaving, that stopped, and there started because there's enough troops after mobilization. You started rotations, so all these officers from these volunteer units, if they didn't have the right training, they start sending them to training.
Right.
And the guys in the DNR, LNR, now they're part of the Russian military as an actual structure. And they started, when they started sending them to actual training courses that they hadn't had before. So there was an organization that was built into it. And they started getting better equipment too. Started filling them with equipment. There were problems with equipment. Because of corruption. I can't say it's all fixed, but it's being fixed very rapidly, especially Belousov. He's doing a very good job. He's a religious man who's active in the church. He's not the problems that were before. The contract army had everything it needed. But when they started opening up, the warehouses, and this was back in 22. Yeah. There were quite a few warehouses that were either empty or old equipment that rotted away, not what was on the list. So that went back even down to Servikov, who got at the army. So that was like one of those shit moments. And the volunteer services of volunteers, people stood up and people started collecting goods, buying equipment, things like that, collecting money and shipping it all down to the front lines. We took plenty of stuff down there. A lot of that stuff is now there and the military provides. Yeah. But 22, 23 was kind of pretty hard on that.
Well, my point in this is because you've experienced both the U.S. military and now the Russian military, and you can conclude, I would think, both are big bureaucracies. And both do stupid things, but it's not that the Russians are more stupid than the United States. In fact, I would almost argue that right now, Russia has proved more nimble and deft at adjusting, saying, "Oh, okay, we got a problem here, we got to fix it." They're not as entangled in bureaucracy as the U.S. is, in my view. Would you agree with that or disagree?
Yeah. Absolutely. Back in 22, and this is a prime example. Back in 22, to order a fire mission would take up to an hour and a half. Now, if you're advancing, depending on where you're advancing, but you may be able to handle an hour delay while you're waiting for a fire mission because every general up there wants to sign off on it.
Yeah.
Now it's 5 minutes. It's been absolutely reorganized because it doesn't. But when you're on the defense, the enemy's attacking. You don't have an hour to wait. The battle's over, and they've gone by you and say bye. And that's another thing that happened in Kharkov because our friends of our friends, they lost their oldest son. He was a gunner in a BMP-3. Well, it was a BMP-2 when he got killed. They ran over a mine that was placed either by drone or by it was a German mine on a railroad that they'd used several times on a static front. But he, good kid, extremely bright kid. Quit university, volunteered. Everybody loved him. He got helped get a lot of guys out of Kharkov because they got encircled. But he was in a built-up position. The Ukrainians, when they came out into the Kharkov offensive, they lost a huge portion of their army because they had this iron fist that they had collected up, tanks, heavy equipment, but they were hiding them in basements, parking lots, underneath high-story buildings, knowing that Russia isn't going to Gaza Kharkov. If it was Israelis, it'd all be over. But Russia isn't going to destroy hundreds of thousands of civilians. So they kept it there, but, you couldn't hit it. Well, when they did their Kharkov offensive, so these Russian strong points were sometimes 3 to 5 kilometers between each other. I mean, just gaping holes, right? And it was obvious enough that if they pushed, they were going to go through. So what they did was the Ukrainians used flying columns. The same thing they did in Kursk, which are great as long as there's not a static front all of a sudden, because then that flying column just becomes meat. And what happened when they finally started really trying to get up toward the atomic power plants, there was already a front built up, and those columns just run right into ambushes and got wiped out because they've got nothing but light vehicles. So they're fast moving, but they can't take any built up place. So they get bypassed by these by these flying brigades, and the flying columns will get in the rear, and they'd start causing havoc on supply, things like that, communications. But they couldn't take the built-up places like where he was at. And that's when the Ukrainians pulled out the heavy equipment out of Kharkov and started assaulting those heavy positions. They still never took a single one because they were being pulled back fast enough that they couldn't overrun them. But when they actually came out, they came out right underneath the Russian air umbrella, artillery umbrella, and they lost most of that fist. By the time they punched through Krasny Limon and up to where the lines finally stabilized, they had lost most of their fighting power up there, because they came out of that hiding area. But those areas, and they couldn't call fire enough because it was taking up to an hour to get a fire mission in. Well, the enemy's gone by that point. Well, that's been reorganized. I mean, it's 10 minutes max between, by the time it's 10 minutes to get an Iskandar fired onto a target. Artillery comes even faster. I mean, that's a total reorganization. They cut out the top brass. They assigned batteries to whatever mission. You've got artillery support. Everything's gone speed. I mean, that's a total reorganization right there.
Yeah, and that's what I think so many, especially a lot of these NATO former NATO generals, Ben Hodges, David Petraeus, and I had worked with them. Again, I was scripting these counterterrorism exercises over 23 years. And I worked with UCOM, CENTCOM, PACOM, AFRICOM. I did all the comms. And, the point you're making that I think is so important is that, through your own experience. So when you come in as a second lieutenant, and then, you're being mentored by a captain. And then once you go through second, first lieutenant, then you get promotable to captain, where you're being mentored by a major. And that major is being mentored by a lieutenant colonel. And that lieutenant colonel is being mentored by a colonel. So you're always drawing on, you're ideally working with experienced people. And unspoken in that is you've always got some senior NCOs who actually know what the hell's going on, keep you from getting killed. Well, the United States has not really had that ability to transfer that kind of knowledge, because all we've been fighting were goat herders carrying AKs, no artillery. I know from my old boss at the State Department was a retired Marine colonel who did 2 tours in Vietnam. And, when he talked about a quick reaction force in Vietnam, that meant, you had an artillery unit that had your position zeroed. You had actually a full company that was capable of responding through helicopters. And you had a whole host of fixed wing and rotary wing aircraft that could bring fires in. Now, that was a quick reaction force. Jump ahead to 2003, 2004 in Afghanistan, and they sent that one crew of Navy SEALs out, 4 guys, and they got ambushed. And the quick reaction force was basically 20 guys on a helicopter, and they didn't have any support from So when I started doing exercises, I thought, we're going to learn lessons learned from past experience. Bullshit. There was no lessons learned. There was a lot of forgetting going on. It seems though the Russians are doing the exact opposite right now. And that's what I think the West is missing.
Russia always has this tendency, if you look historically, Russia always has a tendency of starting out slow, but with a very high learning curve. And that happened in World War II, in the Great Patriotic War. It's interesting enough, the Germans learned blitzkrieg from Soviet tacticians. But the Germans being the Germans and understanding Stalin's slight paranoia problem, the Gestapo prepared dossiers on a lot of generals who they wanted removed. and that they were going to overthrow Stalin back in the mid-30s. And Stalin pushed him. And that got rid of a lot of very experienced officers.
Yeah.
But at the beginning of the war, this is an interesting statistic I read once. At the very beginning of the war, there was 5 Russian soldiers dying for every German soldier. There were 3 Americans and British and French dying for every German soldier. And the reason wasn't because Germans were some kind of super soldiers, is because of the level of aptitude of the officers and NCOs. Flip that to 44, 45, because, in the U.S., it's, the Russians just buried them in corpses.
Yeah.
Well, no. You go to Königsberg. Königsberg is a perfect example. Built as a fortress from the very beginning. Fortified. Hitler dropped 120,000 garrison in there. It's going to wait. It's going to hold the Red Army up for 6 months. It lasted 2 weeks. And the Germans took more casualties than the Russian army assaulting a super fortress city.
Mm-hmm.
And that's unheard of if you think about it. I mean, you're on the defensive and you're losing more men in an urban, in a built-up, heavily built-up, fortified urban environment than the enemy assaulting. That's insane. But that was the difference between, by now you've got the Russian or the Soviet officers and NCOs are so experienced versus the Germans that have lost all that experience. They're not just pushing whomever they can up into the officer ranks. Everybody else is dead. Yeah. That's, by the way, also what we're seeing in Ukraine now, because the big minus in the Russian military, and it's still a minus, is Russia does not have a professional NCO corps. We're trying to push that through. Me and a few people in the know, we're trying to push that through in military, in the defense ministry, to set something up like that, at least have a test case. Well, the Ukrainians actually did do that. NATO set up and trained professional NCO corps. So that allowed them to react a lot faster than they should have been able to react back in 2022. Because the NCOs, you didn't have to have officers. The NCOs, the NCO can do. An experienced NCO, that may be worse than having an officer in charge. And they were able to remobilize themselves and react. Granted, most of those guys are now dead, have run off, or are invalids. So they're having problems because their NCO corps is now lower class. Their officer corps is pretty lower class because, all the other guys, the experienced guys are mostly dead or getting themselves as far in the rear as they can to stay alive. And the Russian military is on the other hand. The officers are professional. They've got the experience that they didn't have before. And the sergeants, they're not professional sergeants, but they're experienced.
Yeah.
But you still need a professional NCO corps. I mean, that's it, you know that. That's just a matter of getting that through the bureaucracy. To get them to understand them.
Well, and that's sort of a legacy of the Tsar, going back to Tsarist Russia. And that was, and that's Israeli. The Israelis adopted basically, if you will, a Russian Soviet model for their army, as opposed to a Western model.
Well, I'll disagree on that. The Tsarist army had professional NCOs because the term of service was 25 years.
Oh, okay.
So, and the Soviet army up to about the 1950s had about to the mid 1950s had professional NCOs because part of that was from the Tsarist army. Okay. Then you had the World War II experience. Now, my father, God rest his soul. So he was born in 41. He went, did his 3 years of service, mandatory service back in, so he was 18 when he went in. And in half a year, he was a junior sergeant. Well, really, I mean, what kind of junior sergeant do you become in half a year? Yeah. So you know how to tie your laces a little better than the kids coming in behind you. Yeah. And he was a senior sergeant in 3 years. I mean, again, how much experience do you have with a senior sergeant at 3 years? None. I mean, realistically, he's 21, he's a senior sergeant, and that wouldn't even be a buck sergeant in most armies, unless he was a super trooper. That's 3 to 5 years to be a buck sergeant. So that was the problem. It started in the 50s, and it's still, except in the special forces, there you had professional NCOs, and still do.
Okay.
But other than that, that's still an issue. Now, hopefully this issue is going to get resolved. I've got I know how it's supposed to be set up. We'll see. I don't know if it'll, again, it's a bureaucracy. In this case, it's a bureaucracy. But the Tsarist army and the Soviet army up to the 50s had professional NCOs, very professional NCOs.
All right. Well, thank you for correcting that record. My boss at State, the Marine, he was very derisive of the Israelis because they don't have a professional NCO corps, and you got a 22-year-old first sergeant, and a 22-year-old captain. And you go, are you kidding me? Come on, please. It's just...
Yeah, I noticed that.
I mean, normally a first sergeant's like 29. They've been in for, 10, 11 years, 12 years. Let me get you out of here.
If you screwed up a few times and get demoted a few times, probably in his mid-30s. I can feel my stomach control. Why'd you get demoted? I got in a fight. Got drunk at a fight. Okay, understand.
We'll plan to do this again in another 3 or 4 weeks to see where we stand. But I do want to get you out on one closing comment. This may I may not be giving you enough time to deal with it, but it looks to me like Aliyev in Azerbaijan has made a big mistake. He has poked the bear is awake, and it's eating his ass.
Oh, he poked the bear and he kicked the lion in the balls. The Persian lion. This guy, the only thing saving his fur right now, for the most part, is the fact that you have the anti-Armenian in power. And the anti-Armenian, I think the Armenians are starting, because I know enough Armenians are associated with, and one guy who was a friend of my wife's from he was from Tbilisi. He's an Armenian from Tbilisi, and there's a friend of my wife's from school, and he moved down to Yerevan, and now he's in Los Angeles. And he knew Pashinyan back when he was just a journalist. Mm. He's a journalist himself. And he's like, this guy was a piece of shit to begin with. He was scum. He was, he was always for sale. And I've told everybody, the interesting part is the Armenian diaspora in the U.S. is finally waking up. Because these are the people that were in the CIA pocket. They're absolutely, anything the U.S. does in Armenia is great. And the U.S. is backing Pashinyan, we'll back Pashinyan. And all of a sudden it's, that's Pashinyan. And he's like, I told them all from the very beginning, nobody wanted to listen. Now they're all in a panic. Well, Pashinyan is getting ready. He's going to reform the church and to turn it into another sect. Basically, reform the church means gutting it, Ukrainian style. He's now signing documents to allow 400,000 Azerbaijanis to move into Armenia.
Mm. Yeah, he's
suicide.
Yeah, he's not long for this world.
But from what very knowledgeable people told me, the problem is amongst the Armenian elites in Yerevan, there's quite a few of them that are prepared to become Sunni Muslims and rewrite themselves as Turks, as long as they get into the big economic pie that is Turkey. That's the level of sellout they have in the elite that are well prepared to have Armenia become the Khaganate of Yerevan once again, like it was before the Russian army arrived there under the Tsars, and just erase Armenia off the map as either part of Azerbaijan or Turkey, as long as they get their share. But there was 2 weeks ago there was an attack on Astrakhan, drone attack.
Mm-hmm.
It sank a freighter. Luckily, it wasn't in deep water, so it just kind of settled on the bottom. Most of it's still above the water line. But the fact is, there was a drone attack. And the witnesses are saying the drones flew out of Azerbaijan. So the problem for Aliyev, of course, is a lot of his compatriots are now being sent home, minus all of their property. Thank you, government, confiscate it and get out for the rest of your lives. And they are starting to build up in Azerbaijan. They're starting to get very angry in Azerbaijan. Plus, Azerbaijan's economy, it's mostly either oil, it's energy-based, or agrarian. And agrarian, the borders have been closed. So the tomatoes are rotting, the milk is spoiling. And I don't know why they get the milk. There's 2 Azerbaijani dairy companies that sell into Russia. Russia's the 3rd largest producer of milk goods in the world. Not sure why. I guess they were just trying to appease them still.
Yeah.
Letting them in. But it's all been blocked off. And then you've got 2 oil refineries that were hit.
SOCAR?
Yeah. And I have a good friend of mine. He is second or third person in the ministry of second person. What some minister in the Ministry of Energy in Georgia, and his wife is the sister of Kaladze, who's the mayor of Tbilisi, and he's very close with Ivanishvili. So I mean, it's Georgia. All these small countries. Yeah. A lot of people are related, especially you get to a certain level. Well, she was telling me the only reason the gas in Georgia burns is because 60% of what the gas they're buying gas from Sakar, and then they're pumping in 60% of that gas mix from Gazprom, because he said the crap that they're getting from Sakar, they don't have decent gas. It doesn't burn. It's wet, and it's very low quality. There's a lot of impurities that they don't clean out, and on top of that, their oil has gotten bust. They've lost over $1 billion in oil that they've gotten fines from Turkey, from different European countries, and there's another $500 million worth of oil sitting in tankers nobody wants because it's contaminated. It needs to be recleaned before it can be used. So all of this started occurring very, very quickly. Oh yeah, it's the Russians. Well, yeah, to damage that much oil, you'd have to have several tankers standing by your pipeline and pumping that into your pipeline. Right. Obviously, that didn't happen. But so they're having problems suddenly building up in every direction.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna. It's going to be a pretty unsettled time. We'll do this again. I try to do like one show a week. So I'll wait, 3 or 4 weeks, reach back out to you, get you out, because by then I think we're going to have some important military developments to discuss. I don't know.
Oh, definitely.
I don't think Ukraine can hang on for much longer. At some point, it breaks.
Well, here's the problem with that. Well, first of all, as they say, it's all over but the dying.
Yeah.
And there's still going to be a lot of dying. I mean, on the defensive, you can still hold to a degree. The problem is a lot of people, they think, oh, well, once the Russian army gets to the Dnieper, it's over.
Yeah, no.
Why?
Yeah.
Because the Dnieper is so wide, you can't shoot artillery across it. I get asked on Russian television, hey, how far are we going to go? When is it going to end? Like, I don't know, London, Paris.
Yeah.
There's no stop. No, think about it. We do a buffer zone in Kharkov. The people living in that buffer zone, who do they become? They become Russian citizens.
Yeah.
They're getting artillery attacked or terrorist attacked by drones from further down Kharkov Oblast or from Poltava Oblast. What Russia has to do? Russia has to defend them. That means you have to stretch the front forward. Now, the people in those areas, who do they become? They become Russian citizens. They're being artillery attacked or they're being hit. What do? You go further and you keep going until you reach somebody that doesn't want to shoot.
Yeah.
Whether it's the Dnieper, whether that's Kiev, whether it's Lvov, whether that's Warsaw, Berlin, I don't know. Hopefully you don't have to go that far. Hopefully sanity reigns supreme, but
one of the things that may happen, and it'll be, we'll close out on this, the West is due for a major financial crisis. With a financial crisis and no longer ability to fund this madness in Ukraine, that might bring it to an end. But
hey, you notice, by the way, the Poles have started getting nervous.
Yes.
The Poles didn't come to Washington. They're now starting a pissing match with Zelensky over Bandera. But what they're really getting nervous is that the Germans are planning a 500,000-man army at the minimum. Their Rheinmetall is now building tanks again. They put 8 tanks together out of brand new tanks together last year, and they're doing it again. They're upping their production, and they're also building a new plant by 26 by the end of 26 to produce 60,000 rounds of 155 per month. Well, whenever the Germans militarize, that's never good for a Poles.
Yeah,
it never ends well.
Yeah. Bad history there. Hey, Stas.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks a lot, man. I'm glad we finally got to meet face to face. Always admired your work, and we'll have you back.
Same here. Hey, if you don't mind, I'd like to get you onto my podcast.
Anytime. Happy to do it. Just we'll work it out as we adjust these different time zones. I'm 7 hours behind.
Yeah. It's going to be 8 hours.
Yeah.
Since we don't change time.
Exactly. All right, my friend. Thanks so much.
Yep. Cheers.
Bye. All right. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this broadcast and learned a little bit more about the evolving nature of the Russian army, and from the voice of somebody who's been both in the U.S. and the Russian military. If you enjoyed this, please hit the like and subscribe button. Thank you for watching. I'm Larry Johnson, and this has been Counter Currents. Bye-bye.